guys, welcome to Talk About It podcast. I'm Angie.
And I'm Jessica.
This is a faith-based podcast where we just talk about where we see God in the everyday.
Yes.
So we're excited. We know Mother's Day is this weekend, and we wanted to just touch and talk a little bit about motherhood.
Yeah.
I know that Jessica and I both have a different walk in this subject, but there's so much knowledge and so much experiences that I think both perspectives can bring to the table. And I know that this is something that God placed in my heart, and I reached out to Jessica and I said, motherhood is important. Prepping for motherhood is important. And this Sunday, after hearing such a powerful word and a message from our pastor at our church, it really inspired me to dive a little deeper into it and just speak about the struggles, the everyday, things that come with motherhood. So I want to just dive right into it. And I guess, when the Holy Spirit places something in your heart, you just kind of have to go with it. And one of the things that I heard today that really touched me and was kind of just like tugging my heart was the sometimes the mom shame that we hear. And it's not me wanting to start off like in a negative foot, but I saw it today in something that I was scrolling and seeing, and it stopped me, and I said, this is so not what Christ wants us to do. This is not what God is calling us to do. God is asking for us to embrace motherhood with grace and with patience, with a village. I for one have such a great village around me. I have a great group of friends that show up for my children as well. So that's important when you are seeking those group of friends. You think about what's important in that child's life, and it's the people that you surround them with, and it's the people you surround yourself with. Because when you don't want to be a mom, you're going to have friends to be like, girl, go get your kid. So,
when you actually said that first part about like the mom shame and stuff like that, it reminded me, and this is like me with my dog analogy, that I remember when I first got my dog, my old coworker was like, oh, you have to, like, she's like, you need to be like a little bit more patient, because I was like, oh my God, like Lino's not learning and I don't know how to like train him and all this stuff. And she was saying, she's like, remember that it's his first time being a dog and it's your first time being a dog
that's
mom.
so good. Yeah.
And I thought that was so cool, because I never viewed it that way.
Yeah.
And like the same thing goes for like moms, and I'm not a mom yet, but like I have friends that are first time moms, and it's like, so have good grace because you're a first time mom, and then also have a little bit of patience with the baby and the kid, because they're also new to this earth.
Yeah, it really does. Like, being a mom does not come with a manual, being a parent doesn't come with a manual. So you have to rely on your village, you have to rely on your husband, on your mom, the things she did, the good things she did, and the bad things that she maybe didn't do well.
Yeah.
You have to, change those ways. So I think motherhood is, obviously, there's so many topics that can come up when you talk motherhood, from becoming and getting pregnant, struggling with conceiving, to finally getting an answered prayer, to then bringing that baby home and what that looks like, the first couple of weeks of becoming a mom, the first year, then the kid years, the foundation that you create in their hearts, and then the teenage years, and then I look at my parents and I'm like, they never stopped parenting, because now we're adults and they're still parents. So like motherhood is like a full-time rest of your life job. And kudos to all moms out there that make it look so graceful and so beautiful. I know my mother did that. She is a very hardworking woman. I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers. So we're a pretty big family, and we've seen loss. I've seen her how she deals with losing a daughter, and that wasn't easy. I've seen how her strength and faith and resilience has gotten her through like the toughest times, and those are things that have rubbed off on me. Like, I think that her strength. I get all my strength from the Lord and from how she fought her battles, which was, with just a lot of faith and a lot of prayer. So, and that kind of leads me into, that responsibility that we have as parents is leading our children to the Lord.
Yeah.
What are the first things that we need to do to instill that in our children? So have you thought about that, Jess? Have you thought about, like, okay, when I'm a mom, what is that going to look like?
Yes. In my mind, I know it's playing out way easier in my mind than what it's probably gonna be. In my mind, I played out like, we're going to church on Sunday and you're coming. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it could probably be completely opposite. But I definitely know that I'm going to be relying on God's strength all the way.
Yeah.
I get to learn so much from my friends that are moms. I have friends that are moms to like newborn babies. I have friends that have kids that are toddlers, that are in their teen years. And that's as far as it goes in my friend group. But then I also have like nieces and nephews, so I get to see my sisters be moms and how they've raised their kids. I have a 19-year-old nephew. I have little nieces, and it's fun. It's fun watching. It's also fun enjoying this season that I'm in.
Yeah.
But that's one that I'm definitely looking forward to, and I can't wait, and I'm not gonna take it for granted. Yeah.
I think it's a special assignment that we get from God, is that somebody told me this once and I never forgot it. Our children are really just ours,
They're
like
gifts from
borrowed.
God,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
gifts, but they're kind of like borrowed time, because
Yeah.
eternally, really, that they're the Lord's, they're God's children. And from that perspective, I thought to myself, okay, well, what do I do with the greatest gift that God gave me? Like, imagine, think about it from that perspective. Like, this is the most beautiful gift that God gave you. What do you do with that? Think about everything that God has given you. To me, I think children is one of them. Just that's what he wanted for your life. That was his will for your life. And what do you do with that? And for me, I think I knew that as soon as they knew better, even maybe as babies, I should have done this. And I know I had my mother-in-law, my mom, pray for it. But then when I finally matured, when I started walking with the Lord, I said, I need my kids to know this love. Like,
Yeah.
I need them to never feel like they're gonna do this life alone. Like, they need to know that God is going to be with them every step of the way. And it's our responsibility as parents to, like, guide them there, to lead them there, to pray over them. When I think about what's the biggest responsibility as a parent now, oh man, I think that was definitely something that has changed me as a person, as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife. I think the responsibility now that I know I hold over their lives is so much more beautiful. So, I'm not the perfect mom, but I do know that the prayers that I pray over my children are not in vain. Like, I've seen change in their hearts. I've seen how they deal with, anxiety or sadness or whatever goes through them. It's almost like they automatically know that they can always go to God and find him there. So it's beautiful. Parents do things differently. And I think that that's okay. But I also feel moms and dads, both roles, but the mom is the nurturer. So I think we need to take that role in a very graceful manner. I don't ever want my kids to think that going to church is like a religion. I always tell them, this is a relationship. This is something that you build gradually. There's days you're going to want to pray, and there's days that you're not going to want to pray. One of the things I started doing this school year was every morning say your prayers, and I got some pushback from, my
I
oldest.
can imagine. Mom,
I don't want to the point where what I realized, though, is he didn't want to be told to pray. What I learned from him was, Mom, I'm going to do this because I want to do this, not because you're telling me to do that. And then I was like, okay. God listened to my prayers. I wanted him to do that. Him serving in the church, I know that he was big on that at the beginning of the year, and now he's slacking. So I'm looking at it as a season. But what I do in those moments is I go to my village. I
Yeah.
will text you and say, Jess, little prayer for Sebastian today, because it's one of those days. Or I'll reach out to the youth pastors and tell them, like, give it a little extra prayer today, because it's, he's struggling with some stuff. But he always comes back, and that's one of the things that's so beautiful in scripture. It says, lead your child to the Lord, and he'll never like strive from that. He'll always know where to seek him. And
that even happens to us as adults.
Yeah.
Like what they go through, a season of like kind of like.
Well, I think with you, you've shared with me in the past, like, your mom planted that seed on you. You started going to church when you were here, and when you guys came here, and you were very little. She found a church community. You had that seed planted at a very young age, and I always think about that. Like, that seed is so important. We know that all of us got that seed planted at one point in our lives, but how powerful is it when we do that at a very young age? I was actually, I attended we both attended. We went to the thing together where they said, what percentage of children or of people under the age of 18 accept Christ. And we were very surprised. Yeah, we were very surprised to learn that it was like up in the 90%.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
never thought.
Yeah. So I thought about
That's
that,
amazing,
and I said,
for today's community.
Yeah, for our young youth, that they are more willing to accept Christ than we are as adults. That was wild to me. And so that goes to show you that those seeds that are planted in young kids' life matter. So that's how I've been kind of looking at it. I've literally walked into my son's room and anointed it. I've anointed his pillow, his bed, every area, his headphones, because I want to be monitoring what he's listening to.
Yeah.
Like, literally. And, he sometimes has these little wonderful arguments with me, which you've heard far too well.
So give me your phone, Sebastian. He's like deleting everything as he's giving it to you.
Yeah, that's literally what he thinks he's doing. And he knows better. Like, he knows better. He actually came to me the other day and he said, Mom, I want to talk about this song that you're not allowing me to listen to. And I said, okay. I said, let's have an open discussion about it. And he was like, if you listen to the lyrics, he goes, it does have a couple curse words. He's like, but it's nothing bad. And I said, well, Sebastian, what do you think the song is about? And he goes, I feel like it's just about somebody that's like depressed and is just going through life. And I said, okay. I said, so you have a choice here. I said, are you going to keep listening to something that's feeding something that you might be feeling? Or are you going to remove that out of your life so that it doesn't feed into things that are going into your mind that the enemy is trying to put into your mind? I said, that is a choice you have. And I didn't want to take away that choice from him, because I needed, I've been praying for discernment, so I needed to like kind of test God, right? And say, okay, God, I've been praying for this over his life. I want you to show me that there's something in his life that's happening where he can make these decisions for himself. Because if he can't, then I'll step in and continue to, mom and parent him. But I want, and I believe and have faith that you are going to do that in his life.
Yeah.
And we were at the beach while we were having this discussion, and he just turned around and he said, you're right, Mom. I understand what you're saying. That's all he said. And that's all he needed to say. Because in that moment, I knew I gave him the authority to choose what's best for him. And, it doesn't always happen that way. There are things that we have to really just cut out of their lives. But even for us adults, like, don't we have to do that sometimes? Don't we have to discern the things we listen to and the conversations we have around our children, or, and those conversations matter. He tells me all the time, he goes, you and your friends always talk about Jesus. They're so crazy. He goes, Dad doesn't do that. And I'm like, well, Dad's never around his friends. I'm like, that's probably why. I'm like, Dad is a very quiet man. He's more reserved. I'm like, but me and Dad always talk about Jesus. So it's funny because they're listening and seeing everything we're doing.
Yes.
So
yeah, they're definitely picking up things, and that's, like what I notice and what I see. And that's why I think like that's one of the key things that is so important as like parents. And like that's why I'm trying to build my foundation so rooted on God, not only for me but for generations to come. I pray that one day I get the opportunity to be a mom. And if I'm going to be a mom, like, how am I going to steward that, So I think, putting boundaries, like how you were saying, especially like even like as soon as they're able to comprehend certain stuff, like putting boundaries and making sure that they're like going to God for everything and being rooted in God is so important. And what they see around you, like they see you and your friends and the kind of conversations that you guys have. And like the same thing goes with my mom and I. Like now we have so much conversations about faith, and sometimes it's hard when I try, because like I'm so good with my English, and even though Spanish is my first language because that's what I learned first, but I feel like I'm so much better with my words in English, I guess because I go to English church.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have like this fire, and I'm trying to tell my mom like this good word, and then it doesn't come out in Spanish as powerful as it did in English. But regardless, like my mom's like, I understood, like te entiendo.
Yeah, you know like, that the Holy Spirit is doing its
that
thing,
it did what it had to do, and like those conversations that I have with her, and like her growing up, and like also when we would go to church, we're like, I don't want to go to church. I don't want to wear this dress. I don't want to wear these socks. And I was like, girl, you better put on the dress. You better put on the socks. And I was like, we went, and then like the time period that we didn't even go, like she would always still like, she's had her Bible that her friend from Cuba gave her years ago, and she still has it to this day.
Wow.
And it's the one that she takes to church, and like, so I think like the community has been really good for her now that she started going to church.
Oh, for sure.
Now we have more conversations, and I know that the day that I like, I see now that she goes and like tells my sister like, hey, like, can I pick up the girls to take them to church. And my sister has been letting my mom go on Sundays and pick up my nieces to go to church.
So great.
So it's like, even like we want to make sure that they're being discipled. And it's like, you tell my nieces, and they're like, oh, like they come home, and these are the stories that I hear from my mom bringing her home to my sisters. So I'll be like, oh, Mom, today we learned about Jesus, and we learned about how he healed the blind man and all this stuff. So they're like learning all these things.
So
I think
beautiful.
It's so cute.
And you get to witness that, right? And that's I feel like, see, that's how I feel like God is preparing you. Like you get to see that with your immediate family. You get to see what your mom is doing to your nieces, what she's going to do with your children. So, and I think she's preparing for that. Like that's so beautiful. It's almost like when it happens, it's not even going to be like, it's going to be second nature to her just to like pick up your girl. I said girls. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Girls, boys, whatever God has in, his plans for you, and take them to church. And then, them coming home and giving you these stories. That's something that I think God is allowing you to witness, because that is a promise that he has for, us women that, the women that haven't, been able to have children yet. Like there's going to be things around. You just have to like appreciate them and see them and say, this is what God is showing me, so that when I'm ready, like this is what it's going to look like. I think he doesn't do those things by coincidence. Like I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that if you take those moments and you hold on to those promises and that faith that that's what your life is going to look like, it also allows us to like open up those opportunities to break generational curses. Because if you think about it, maybe when you were growing up, you didn't see that as a child, but now as an adult, you're seeing those generational curses be broken.
Yeah.
And I always say there's a lot of children out there that are growing up with no love. And sometimes that's, I do believe it's a lie from the enemy, but I also believe that it's just lack of breaking a generational curse. Because if you were not raised in a home where there was love, let love come from you, like seek anything like that's going to help you break that curse and allow love to flow from your heart. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is finding God through Jesus.
Yeah. That's the only way. Because I feel like that's such a hard thing to go to. And, there's so many people that are listening that they either didn't have a mom growing up, so they didn't have that. So it's like sometimes the conversations that I have with my mom, because sometimes like the way that my mom's mom was with her was how her mom was with her.
Yeah.
So it's like, luckily my mom was like, I don't want to be with Jessica, how my mom, not that my grandma was bad, my grandma was amazing, But she decided to choose, okay, like the things that don't serve, I'm not going to bring them into this next
Correct. Yeah,
season.
not like anything that
Bring the
didn't serve
good
you
stuff.
good.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
bring the stuff that is going to be worthy, the stuff that are going to serve God. Like,
Yeah,
not the
so
things
good.
that are not going to add value to someone. So a lot of the times, a lot of people, like, you know, we have friends that they didn't grow up with a mom, or like their family, their parents like passed away at an early age, and it's so hard, and I my heart breaks, because it's like, even though like after I lost my dad, which was only 2 years ago, as a full grown adult that I am, like it still hurts. I can't even imagine like not being fully like developed as like an adult, and you're underage, and then you experience that, you know, it's
Yeah,
tough.
it is.
But I feel like God knows the plans for your life, and they're good, and he goes from glory to glory. And I know those things are dark moments, but if we trust in God and in the Bible, we know that his timing is perfect, and that he turns everything into good.
Yeah.
So when we put our strength and our life on that, we're going to be like, God, like, I know the situation is tough, but I know that the plans that you have for me are good. So you start getting rooted in God, and God starts changing your heart, because God is love. He starts changing your heart. And then even though you had that trauma of like losing a parent or not being raised with a parent, you're then being able to, like you said, like not say that because that happened to me, I'm just not gonna be that person, because I was never that person. Because everything in our lives, it's teachable. We're teachable, you know? So we can learn to love someone the way that somebody didn't love us.
Yeah, for sure.
So it really just takes like honing in and partnering with God, and saying, God, I need help with this. Like, meet me right where I'm at. And he will. And it's not easy. And it's like choosing to be that person, because you want to be different. You want to be a better person, and not live in that, because that's just going to bring torment, and that's just going to bring disappointment. And it's like, we don't want to live in disappointment and in torment. We want to live in what God has for us, which is a beautiful life that we have here on earth, you know?
That's so good. Yeah. I think that's you just said it. You know, we're teachable. So one of the first steps that we can take to be teachable is laying everything at the feet of Jesus and saying, okay,
Surrendering.
where are my broken areas? Where do I need that guidance? Where do I need that prayer? Where do I need the strength? You know, and God will reveal himself to you. He's going to show you what a patient, kind, loving God he is. And then that just kind of gives us that wisdom that we need to model that for our children. And, you know, it's not a perfect walk, but I do believe that the Holy Spirit works in ways that are beyond what we think are possible. And we catch ourselves changing, and we catch ourselves being more patient. You know, there's been times I can say I'm the first one. There's times that I lost every ounce of patience that I had. But going to apologize to our children is it can make such a difference in their life. Going to them and giving them a sincere, I'm sorry for losing my temper, or for, you know, not acting the way Jesus would act. And I always say that to them. I say, this is not godly. This is not how Jesus would act, because I want him to know this is not
Okay.
okay. Like, I want you to walk the life Jesus walked, and I want you to act how he wants us to act, and with his love. And you know,
apologize when you need to apologize.
exactly.
You know?
And
we're human.
and I also want them to have a forgiving heart, not only to give an apology, but also to say, of course, mom, I forgive you. Like, I know you're not perfect, and I know you make mistakes as well. And I always say this. I have the most beautiful story where, you know, I lost it, and I went to my youngest son, and I said, I'm so sorry, honey. Like, I'm very sorry. And he said, thank you, mom. Like, he thanked me for the apology, but I really do feel he meant it. I think he was like, I needed to hear that apology. So I always say that, because it was one of the most powerful moments that I went through with him as a mom. Is just a simple apology, and him thanking me for it is really the everything in every change. Yeah, so one of the things that also God put in my heart was like, you know, sharing about how we respond to trials, and model that for our children, because I know that as a mother is not always easy to be vulnerable with your children, because you want to protect them, and you want to kind of show them that there's nothing that's going to come and hinder their life or disrupt their life. And recently, when I got my cancer diagnosis, I thought about like, how do I want to bring my children into all of this? How do I want to expose them to this? Like, I don't want them to be hurt or be worried or live in fear. But then God kind of put in my heart that I needed to model what my response was going to be for that trial. And I didn't understand why at the beginning, because I figured like, no, this is my trial, God. Like, this is not theirs. Like, they're going to be protected from all of this. And my children, I think, were protected because of prayer and because they saw prayer through our church and through our community, through our friends. There was multiple times during my treatment where we had the church come and drop off a meal, and almost always they would come in and also pray. We would hold hands and pray with the boys and the family, and they got to see that. They got to see what our response was. So that's also important. I think it's not, we don't have to give them every detail of our problems, because we shouldn't put our burdens on them.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Like, we need to carry our burdens with God and through Jesus. But I also do think that it's important that we share just enough so that they know God is in the midst of this pain or this trial, and they also get to see the miracle on the other end. And they've seen that. And, I've even have had my nieces and nephews that are their same age see and witness those things. And whatever my boys didn't understand from that, they have their cousins around them and surrounding them and saying, the miracle that we've witnessed in your family is beautiful, and they get to carry that with them. So I would say trials are there for a reason. Bring in your kids with grace and gentleness, and make sure that they're praying along side of you, because I think that that's very powerful for them.
Yeah.
So
there's so many good topics.
I know.
My sharing is so different than yours, but yeah, I'm excited. It's definitely gonna be a season of like just taking it day by day, and being with God every day, asking for strength and courage, and being in community, like how we spoke about last week. Community is so important in the motherhood aspect. I know that you attend the moms group at church, and I know that it's really powerful, because then it makes you like be seen. It makes you feel like you're being heard.
Yeah.
And then you speak to these moms, and they're like going through the same thing you are going through. So you're like, man, like, you have a little bit, it makes you realize to have grace for yourself, because it's like, all right, I'm not in this alone. I'm not the only one. Like, apparently this is a thing. And then it's like,
that we all struggle with.
Yeah, and it's like weird how, not weird, but I think this is just like how life is. Like, when the kids are like close in age, this I could be so wrong. When the kids are close in age, they kind of go through the same thing, because it's like what's happening in school, and it's like what they're seeing in school. And then you come and you talk to your friends that have kids the same age as like Sebastian, and then you're like, yeah, girl, like Sebastian's going through the same thing, because like in school is where, yes, we have the foundation at home, but like when they go to school, like they're in the world,
Yeah. And I don't want the world raising my children.
Yeah.
I can tell you that much. That's why that village is so important. I care about the friends that walk into my house, because if Sebastian happened to run something by you while I'm not around, I know that whatever is going to come at him is going to be godly, faith-based, encouraging. Yep. And that's important to me. I don't want the world to raise my children. And that's, we're not here to be perfect parents. We're here to pray for discernment so that we can raise children how God wants us to raise them, and not allow the world to influence them. And the only way that we can do that is to protect their environment. So when you think about, the friends that you have as a mother, like, going to a mom's group, you not only get, right, the encouragement and the being seen and being heard, you get stories and advice from women that are walking, a faithful life
Yeah.
with God too, that the same struggles are happening, the same prayers probably need to be prayed. And, it's like that's our village.
Yeah.
That's our sisterhood that we get to go and say, girl, today was not the day. Pray for me. And, next week I'm going to be praying for another mom because she went through it. And I think that's the important thing about community and moms. And I think every woman needs that, like we need that village to help us not to validate being a mom, but to have like a safe space, a safe ear where we can just pour out our struggles. And that's what we get to do with a faith-based community, is not be judged, and not even have to feel like we have to be mom shamed or people pleasing, like, oh, I'm gonna do or I'm gonna say this around these type of women's because that's what they're gonna do with their kids and that's
Yeah.
what's gonna fit in. No, you get to go in there with a vulnerable heart, with all the broken pieces, with all the messy, all the mess.
Yeah.
And you get to hear and get encouragement from women that are like-minded. So that has been everything to me, and even seeing the boys feel accepted and heard through my friends. Like, I never had to worry about a friend that didn't know how to communicate with my kids. I think they knew me so well and they saw how I was a mom to them, that they were like, well, I see how she is parenting them. I'm going to follow her lead. And that was that was like an answered prayer to me. I see it through you, through every friend that goes to my home and speaks to my children. They're seen as an individual. They're heard. And we don't always do that to our kids. We kind of like brush them off and go to the room or go do something. And a friend that acknowledges your children, that hear them, because sometimes we don't always have the patience to do that, I think is so powerful. It really, truly is so powerful. So if Sebastian ever goes to you, Jessica or Camilo, and tell you something, you're going to have to be Titi Jessica. That's not going to say anything.
Like, how can we upset your mom today?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this topic was really cool. And another thing the last thing I wanted to touch up on is like, uh, giving them your point of view of like, like raising kids that are in the spectrum. Like, I feel like when it's a mom that first gets the diagnosis, I mean, you've been at this for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a topic for sure that I think we're going to be able to dive in because you've seen that. You've seen how I've raised them.
I think maybe one day we'll definitely go into that one because I think that's a good one too, because a lot of people are just not receiving a message that you received a while ago. So I know it's a tough one, but I think it'll definitely be,
It really is. It's a testimony. And the beautiful thing is that I've had so many people around me to witness their growth. Recently I found a mom on Instagram that she's, raising autistic boys in a Christian church, I think is her, what her account is about. And it's beautiful because she describes Matthew as, kind of being on the spectrum. Like back in the day, maybe that was the definition of people on the spectrum. And the boys' diagnosis was never their identity. Their identity was always through Christ. And thank God that I had people since the day they were born praying over them and believing and declaring what their life was going to look like, because it really is beautiful to see two young, God-fearing men that are growing up to hopefully make disciples and share their testimony of the struggles that they've had. But for any mom receiving a diagnosis or a label, whatever you want to, whatever you want to call it, I know that that's up for the debate too. Remember that their identity is in Christ. Remember that what they were brought to this world to do is beyond our understanding. How God is going to use them is beyond what we see when we've received that diagnosis, because as moms, again, we're protectors and it's not an easy thing to deal with. But we also have an obligation and a responsibility to put that diagnosis and lay it at the feet of Jesus and just say, if this was your will, then you will do beauties with that, and you will come in and make them your own, in your own image, and use them for powerful testimonies and in powerful ways that are beyond what we can see in that moment. So I've seen it, I've witnessed it, he'll never speak. He'll never be able to sit in a classroom. He'll never be able to, make it out of like a 5th grade level. I mean, I've heard it all at this point.
And you asked this kid who was the 28th president, he's like,
their memory is beyond anything. I always think like Camilo will be used at one point in his life as a history maker and a history like preacher maybe, or of some sort, and I'm going to speak that over his life, because, and if that's what's God's will, then let it be, because I promise you, if he were to study the Bible like he studies U.S. history, he would be sitting in front of us and spitting things to us from that Bible. Hopefully,
he'll be like, did you ever watch the movie The Book of Eli with Samuel Jackson? No, not Samuel Jackson. I forgot the guy's name. I'm gonna say it wrong, but but it was a guy that was blind. Not saying that your son is blind, but this guy was blind, and he was in charge of like taking this Bible to this place, right? Because it was like the end times, or I don't remember the storyline, but I remember that he was blind, and then he ended up like taking it, and like the Bible was all like in Braille. So he actually sat there and he like read the whole Bible,
Wow.
But like in Braille to this guy, because it was the last Bible left. So then this guy rewrote the Bible like as he was reading it in Braille.
Oh, wow.
And it just reminded me, because like that guy just like he knew it. Like if it was
sometimes I ask him, I said, how do you know this? And he's like, I read it. Like I think Wikipedia, YouTube is his best friend. I just need him to get him to dive into the Bible stories the same way. But, it's a work in progress. I'm praying over that. And he is learning. He is, growing into that role in his life. So it's just exciting to see, we can just continue to pray over their lives and see what God is going to do to them. I know God gave me this honor to be their mother, and I don't carry that lightly. I've made many mistakes along the way, but I've given myself grace, and I never lose sight of the identity that they have through Christ. And that is the most important thing right now as a mother for me, is just seeing them to grow into that role.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
Thank you guys for this amazing episode. I know that there was so much to share, so much more coming, and we're excited to be in this space. Thank you.
Yes, guys. Thank you so much for having us today, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Bye.